Here's an idea. There is not one, but two Nikola Teslas. Here I am about to introduce the man who needs no introduction. That ingenious inventor, that enchanter of electricity, Serbian national and American hero, Nikola Tesla. Tesla has experienced a spell of popularity rivaled possibly only by that of bacon. It's bacon! As such, he might be reaching a state of saturation rivaled possibly only by that of cronuts. Scientists to food analogies aside, we hope that in spite of such burdensome popularity, you'll stick around to hear us talk about why we are not popularizing the Tesla, but only a Tesla. Tesla's accomplishments were, of course, numerous. He contributed to the designs of alternating current, sonar, X-ray, radar. He demonstrated wireless power transmission and was an all-around electrifying presence, get it, in the engineering community. He is famous for a good many things, though perhaps most notably for his bitter rivalry with his former boss and American inventor, Thomas A. Edison. As detailed by the Oatmeal, link in the description, the two men are like water and oil. Tesla is the geeky genius nerd trying to power the future, and Edison is the boorish, profiteering, bloat-bag jerk sack. So clearly people will root for Tesla, the dashing genius, the clear underdog. Except, was he? Now, I'm not about to tell you to stop liking Nikola Tesla. Being enamored of him makes perfect sense. He stands as a pillar of the DIY and hacker ethoses. He was a charismatic and weird dude, and was even played by David Bowie in that one movie, so that's cool. I'm not about to say that he's not that guy, but I am about to say he's a lot more than that guy. And then we're gonna talk about how history is kind of weird. You ready? Tesla was a lot more than that guy. For starters, in his heyday, Tesla was famous, like cover of Time magazine famous, which makes his eventual destitution all the more upsetting. Also upsetting, he believed in eugenics. He thought subatomic particles were a bunch of hooey and that Einstein's theory of relativity was not on track. At one point, he was sure that he received a transmission from Mars, and there was the whole thing with the pigeon. Poor guy. Now, maybe Tesla had a great reason to stay off the E=mc² train, and maybe he did hear from Mars, though he was definitely off on the eugenics point. Those tidbits rarely make their way into the popular portrait of Tesla. There are, in essence, two Teslas. The one made of meat and gray matter who lived a life full of ideas and complexity, the historical Tesla, and the one made of images, photos, and stories that will live forever and throughout time beyond the first one, the simulated Tesla, the simulacrum of the historical Tesla. One is not better than the other per se. I mean, both are true, though at this point, simulated Tesla might be more true simply because he's more familiar. He's the one that most people think of when they think of Tesla. He is the celebrated Tesla. He is the true Tesla, though maybe not the wholly accurate Tesla. Truth, French philosopher Michel Foucault writes, is undoubtedly the sort of error that cannot be refuted because it has been hardened into an unalterable form in the long baking process of history. Simulated Tesla, all of his characteristics baked into a handy set of images for and by his admirers, is, whether he is or not, true. Now, at this point, it would be very fair to wonder aloud to yourself, hold on a minute, since we're all subject to history, doesn't this happen to Birdie? Are Marilyn Monroe, Genghis Khan, Johnny Cash, and for that matter, Rome, the invention of the light bulb, and the Battle of Waterloo all inventions of history too? Well, yeah, sorta, actually, and this is a big problem with history. Aside from being written by the winners, it's also written by humans. And this conundrumizes things. Foucault again writes that in our time, history is that which transforms documents into monuments. In that area where in the past, history deciphered the traces left by man, it now deploys a mass of elements that have to be grouped, made relevant, placed in relation to one another to form totalities. We really want people and events like Tesla and Tiananmen Square and the founding of Apple computers to really and deeply mean something, to fit into a larger picture. We like to see motivation and connection, narrative and progression, but sometimes it's just not there. But it's nicer and frequently easier to understand if it's portrayed as though everything does fit together. Is our understanding of history wrong then, at least as far as it's portrayed in books and movies and on the internet? No. Well, sorta. Tesla definitely exists now beyond empirical evidence, so we need to use images, texts, photographs, whatever else, to conjure him. Some of those images are incredibly clear and useful and behave as great documents, expressing as much truth about their subject as one could possibly hope exists. But sometimes, even in their perfect completeness, they are not complete enough. We like to imagine Tesla or Babe Ruth or Waterloo in just such a way. So we make a simulated Tesla or Babe Ruth or Waterloo that is a little less messy and a little more shiny. Or in the case of Thomas Edison, a lot more shiny. This happens many times because in a past figure or event, we see something that we imagine or want to discourage in ourselves or our time. Historical Tesla, with his physics skepticism and culturally ingrained racism, doesn't really make a great hero of the internet. Simulated Tesla, opposed to corporate interests, effectively open source, and up all night inventing the world's coolest electrical gizmos, that sounds more like it. We'll take one of those, please. Or maybe this dichotomy is just a bunch of hokum, and that we shouldn't view simulated Tesla as history at all, more like historical reproduction. As anthropologist Edward Brunner says, maybe we should see all culture as continuously invented and reinvented, and argue for transcending such dichotomies as original and copy or authentic and inauthentic. Maybe like the inverse of Batman and Gotham, Tesla isn't the historical figure we deserve, but the one that we need, or want, to embody or communicate something about us and our time, and that makes him no less real or authentic. What is important is not that simulated Tesla resembles historical Tesla, but that simulated Tesla stands for what we want and expect of him. Because, I mean, who doesn't want to look up to a charming, debonair figure who can power light bulbs with dirt and coax 135-foot lightning bolts out of thin air? That is basically the textbook definition of badass. What do you guys think? Is our simulated Tesla really Tesla? And does it matter? Let us know in the comments. And instead of asking you to subscribe, I just want to take this moment to apologize to all the history teachers out there. Sorry. It's so great to be back from vacation, back in my corner again. Let's see what you guys had to say about Google and knowledge. Nathan Hawks makes what I would say is a very fair complaint about the episode, which is that John Locke would have only been writing about a biological consciousness, and so that is totally fair. However, the History Channel dig really hurt Nathan. That really hurts. Awesome Media makes the point that while Google might be knowledge, it certainly is not wisdom, and sort of draws a little connection between data, knowledge, and wisdom. This is a great comment, so we'll pause here for a second so you can check it out. Dizigens makes the point that it is not necessarily the amount of information that is on Google, but seems to suggest that it is the quality of the connections between those pieces of information. And of course, you could argue all day long about whether or not those connections are good or bad. And here we are back again at the idea of networked facts. So yeah, it's a good point. The always sharp Ollie Leonard from PhilosophyTube made a video response critiquing my reading of Locke, and then I wrote him a wildly long Tumblr post in response. So we'll put links to those things in the description if you want to check them out. Myra Fox brings up a study where people seem to remember differently when they use a computer, and ShareS says exactly what I would say, which is, I wonder how this would compare to a study done with both computers and a piece of paper. It's hard to say what exactly is changing. 1467 Edward says that Google can't be knowledge because Google can't experience things. But then Smurfs of War 13 actually brings up the point that I would make, which is that Google actually does seem to have a kind of experience. Again, it's not a biological consciousness experience, but certainly an experience. So yeah, that's a rabbit hole you can fall into. AshKuiGP points out that knowledge can only exist in social and cultural contexts of utility, which Google certainly doesn't have. There are no Googles that are getting together at the coffee house and talking to one another yet. This week's episode was brought to you by the hard work of these knowledgeable individuals in a social and cultural context of utility, and the tweets of the week, there are two of them, come from Peter Hoganson, who point us towards an article by Joshua Foer. It is really interesting, and also to the Gettier problems, which kind of changed a lot of stuff about epistemology. Check them out.